Once I have my DWG file open, there are a number of tools that you need to be aware of for working in DWG mode. If you open up the Project Explorer and switch to the AEC Common tasks or tools, you'll notice that there's a DWG work mode available to you. And underneath that, there are all of the individual settings for DWG open settings, DWG save settings. These aren't really necessary in the new 4B version of or update of the AEC work structure, because those settings are now preset through the startup icon. But the DWG Annotation tool is something that's new, and if you open this up and you're placing annotation text, what you can do is select the scale that you're working at. So let's say I was working at 1 to 30, and what this does is sets up the file for working with 1 inch equals 30 feet annotation scale. And if I click annotation or place text, then if I put in test text, you'll notice that the text is now scaled up for 1 inch equals 30. If I change this to 1 inch equals 40, the text height changes for 1 inch equals 40. Another tool is the place note. That also works with the same annotation scale, but it puts you on the correct level for placing notes. If I use the dimension tool, you may notice that it didn't put me in the dimension tool. There is an issue that sometimes you got to come over to tasks, go over to the drawing tools and click on dimension and hit OK one time. Then place the dimension tool, but I have to have objects that I'm going to dimension, and that will place the text. Or I could dimension by 2 points and dimension that way. Or I could dimension angles. I could dimension just about any item, or at least these methods. If you want a different method for dimensioning, you can always hit the tool or hit the scale up here and then pick the dimension style down there. The other thing that you'll notice is this thing can do both slashes and arrows, and it will bring in the style according to whichever one you have picked, and it changes after the fact. Another thing is if you have a cell to place, you can come over to the cell tools, and let's say I was going to place a corner, well, I'm not going to use a corner shower, I'm going to use something a little more like an electrical meter, and that should attach the cell library and set the cell correctly and set the scale. So now my scale of my object is the same as the size of my text. If I were to change to 1 to 40, notice the size goes up. So now I have the ability to jump between different sizes just by changing the scale. The other issue that comes up with annotation is when you go to save your file, it usually sets everything back to your original settings and clears a bunch of data. So with this tool, there's a Save Design button, and this button, when you push it, will put you back into the same settings that you currently have set in this toolbar. So if I hit Save Design at this point, when the file reopens, I can immediately go back and start placing text again at the scale that I'm set for. It's just a time saver. It makes things a little bit easier for you to get around and deal with your work.